And we are live. And Mark, it is really great to see you tonight.
Thank you very, very much, Matt, for this invitation and inviting me on. This is awesome.
I'm going to be honest with you, buddy. I am the guy who is honored. So let's do the introduction and then we'll get right back into it. And I got to give a shout out to the cameraman because he's going to be here for quite a bit. And he's good at not moving the camera at all, if you notice.
Well, that's pretty cool.
You got to laugh. Spencer, you got a little buddy there. What do you have there, Mark?
That would be my 1/6 Mezco Conan.
Oh, that is pretty dope. I love the detail in that thing.
Oh, they do a really good job. Like, I am so impressed with them. And I am completely okay that at 61 I still play with toys. See that? I love that's Mezco too, and that's the statue. That's flipping awesome.
This bad boy, I've been looking at this and wanting to buy it online. Honestly, it's sold out. And I missed it. And I was like, son of a gun, because I've wanted a Conan statue for 20 years now. I've never seen one that was good enough that I actually wanted to spend money on until this one. But I'm like, they're sold out. I can't get them. For the Air Force, I was in Spain about a year ago. It was last March and early April. And I was like, I need to go to an LCS just for fun. I've never been to a Spanish LCS. I was actually walking out of it, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw this statue in the window display, and I'm like, oh! So I actually didn't buy it that night, but it was in Sevilla, Spain, and I ended up going back there like a week later, and I picked it up. So I just can't go home without it. I'm coming home with this big giant box. I mean, this thing was like 18 inches cubed. Yeah. Okay, it was a pretty big thing.
Did they let you bring that carry-on, or did you ship it?
Well, what was nice is I told you I was in the Air Force, right?
Oh, so they flew you home. So they didn't.
Yeah, I was in a big cargo plane, and I was able to get home this way, or I was able to just take it in there. Yeah, but nice. Let's see who's all here in the chat. We have Trev, the shipping guru. Okay, guy has a great YouTube channel. Love it. Wait, I can't click on that guy. Whoops. Oh, Tina, OG. Tina, my buddy Chewbacca is still here, okay? He's having a good time hanging out in I don't know what to call this, a Woodsy Falcon or something like that. But
just let's see
who else is in here. Joffrey, how you doing? And, not this guy. Can I ban this guy from the channel? Jackson Roykirk. Mark and I were talking about Star Trek backstage. In fact, if you look over Mark's right shoulder, you can see Dr. McCoy up there on the shelf, okay? Can you point to Dr. McCoy there, Mark?
Wait, wrong way. He's right there.
Bam. But Jackson Roykirk has an awesome YouTube channel devoted mainly to Star Trek. Gary B., the casual comic guy. One of the most laid-back, chill, cool dudes you will ever get to meet.
His new series on art and whatnot is excellent. I really enjoyed that. I watched that yesterday.
That was such a fun show. It was well-paced. Nobody seemed rushed. A lot of great visuals because you got to see the art. There was a lot of interaction between the chat, the panelists,
Yep.
you know, and like we got to like get our own input in it. I actually was quite amazed at the production of that.
Yeah.
Stephanie did a great job. Gary did a great job. I
Yep.
can't wait to see more of these videos.
Yeah, I think it's unique, and it really gives. I really like the artists. That's one of my things about some of the collecting I do. So yeah,
Yes.
I love it.
Oh, shoot. And I wish I would have loaded up. I talked about a piece that Randy Resnake sent to me.
Oh yeah.
Conan. I put on Instagram. I should have brought it up so I could show it on this channel, but I never got to it. And the camera that it's on, and I'm actually using it right now. I'm using my phone as my webcam. But Steve White, you know, great to see you in there. My good buddy, Pretty Fly, for a Filipino guy who we got a sign just for Pretty Fly. So great to see you in here, Lenny. Oh, what's this guy gonna say? Most of my I did not know that.
Yeah.
That was claim or putting claims on it.
Yeah, Paramount gets really, really sticky about that kind of stuff. Great visuals except my face. Your face is fine, Gary. The only thing you need is just a little bit more robust beard, then it'll be perfect.
I don't know, man. Gary's face. If we could go without Gary's face, it'd be the best show ever. But I got to make sure I'm joking when I say that. That sounded too legit. But it was a fun show about art. Seth 11, my beautiful people. One of my favorite Marilyn Manson songs. Let's see. And the great Doug Breton of the Breton Brothers. Where was I? Somebody thought Breton was his real name. I forget who it was, but I'm like, nope, it's just Bratton. We just make fun.
Breton, that sounds awfully noble-ish.
Very noble-ish. But
Sexy Fly. That's what we'll call him from now on. I don't care if it says Pretty Fly. He's Sexy Fly.
He is Sexy Fly. And here is Brian LCS, one of the most charitable human beings in the community. Does great shout outs. Had a great show on Saturday morning, and he does, you know, standalone videos also, but he does a great job. Don't worry, Gary. Can't see either when he has his eyes closed like he always does. Uh-oh. Gary can't see either. I don't know if it's me having it, but anyhow. So let's get on to our show here. Now, Mark,
yes.
You know, we invited you on here, and we got a lot of Robert E. Howard that we're going to discuss in this show.
Yeah. Yep.
But you know what? You've been on a Reggie Collect show numerous times. I mean, your punch card, it probably is close to being punched out. I don't even know where mine is. Anyhow, I had a punch card.
Yeah, mine's not anywhere near like Doug Bratton, but it's pointless giving him a punch card because it's half his show. If not,
yeah, it's a Doug Bratton show. Okay,
it's a Doug Bratton show hosted by Reggie Collects.
It really is. Well, it's starting to become the Mark Andrews show by Reggie Collects. Okay, and that's a good thing. Actually, Mark, before I forget to tell you, I want to make you a moderator on my channel. But do you know how many Mark Andrews there are on YouTube? I've actually searched you, and there's like I can't find you because it will only let me display so many Mark Andrews at a time.
Yeah,
so
it's a pretty common name, which allows you to get away with all kinds of stuff.
Oh yeah, pretty autonomous. But so
kind of like Jim Smith, like
there's a million of them. Yes. Yep. But I had a friend named Bob Jones growing up. There were a million of that guy.
Yep.
So, Mark, but we get to watch you a lot. But a lot of people don't know what got you into the hobby. You know, when did you start? And why did you continue once you started? But this is your chance to tell the Mark Andrews origin story.
Whoa. Well, you know, you don't want me going completely all the way back because I'm the youngest of 5 kids. So,
did your older siblings collect?
They didn't collect, but they did read, and that's kind of how I got involved in it. Because if you're the youngest of a large group of kids, like as the rest move out of the house, like stuff gets left behind, and you go, well, this is pretty cool, and no one seems to want it. So, you know,
It just
But
becomes yours.
it becomes mine. And though I have given some things that I've kept, I've given them back to them as they've gotten older because they went, "You still have that?" And they get nostalgic and stuff. But
Ooh, Gary has a good idea though. I can go back in a chat and select your name.
Oh,
Ooh, thank you, Gary.
there you go. Yeah, see, he's savvy in this stuff.
Yes. Yes, Mark Andrews was the second choice for John Wick.
Yeah, there you go. Yikes. So what really kind of got me into comics was literally like a couple of things when I was really young. We used to have to go to my grandmother's and grandparents' house to get our hair cut, and they actually had a barber chair in the basement, like one of the old leather ones you crank back. And they, hey Joe, and Doug Collects has a ring to it. Doug's really starting to get off on this. It's the Doug Bratton show hosted by Reggie. Anyway,
Yes,
so there was a couple of comics there that you would read while your father took a razor and I would come out looking like you.
Nice. I just shaved it about an hour ago.
And the other, I really got into them. Where I really started to enjoy them was at a cottage on the shores of Lake Huron. They had, when it was raining and stuff, they had like a milk crate, and it was full of comics. And you'd sit there with the rain in the cottage, and it was those rainy, summery days. And I would read comics waiting for the rain to go. And it was awesome.
But I seem to have froze up right here.
I see that. But the good thing is, it's not a terrible look for you, Matt.
Well, if I do this the rest of the show, I don't know what's going on, but
I hope that you come back.
Hey, here I am.
So
normally I come back in a second or two.
I got some examples of the ones that I used to read back then that I still have some of them because I don't get rid of anything. So things like this.
Robot Fighter.
Yeah, Magnus Robot Fighter. So this is like 1968. Gold Key. There we go. That's better. Gold Key. There were those that I loved those. There was these guys that I used to read.
The Munsters.
Yep.
That is awesome.
1965. And then I asked you about this earlier. So I have the whole set of these just like you do.
Nice.
So this is the first print.
That's number one.
So this is, like 1946, I think, or something like that. So I have this whole series, and these were accepted around the house because, my mom was a librarian and my dad was a teacher. And I have to put this in for someone who keeps making cracks. I don't even know if he's in the chat tonight, but this is the real Turok Son of Stone, not the one that's been mentioned several times.
Yeah, that is the true original.
This is issue 21. It's hard to get a good number one, but this is like one of the ones from my youth that that I kept.
Yes.
And then this one's for Joe, and I got one more after this one. This one's for Joe because he was asking about it. He was mentioning it the other night. So that's
Doc Savage.
Yeah,
Doc Savage is older than Superman, and a lot of people are really sure that he was the inspiration for Superman.
Yeah. When you read his stories, absolutely, like in the pulp fix, like they were all pulp books before this one. So this one's, I think this is 1964.
Okay.
So this is number one, Doc Savage, and I read this book, and I'm amazed that it's still in this condition because I read it a lot. It was just one of those very cool books. So there was those kind of things, like there's other Mission Impossible and Tarzan and all those kind, and they really intrigued me and got me kind of engaged in all these different heroes and stories, and I started keeping them. And then in the 70s, they started to come out with bags and boards.
Yep.
And there was this new phenomena called a comic book shop, because those were all
always around. Yeah.
No, they weren't always around, and like those are all off the rack, right? You would have to didn't have a pull list. You didn't have. That's
No,
why
if you didn't get to the store before anyone else, you might miss out.
Yeah, you didn't, and that was why it was really hard to get sequential series of books.
Yes.
Because if you were not there, you were sick, you were doing chores, you were doing something, you didn't get to the store in time.
There was just gone. You didn't have it. But the Jackson Roykirk, he has that same Doc Savage book.
Yeah, cool. It's a great book, and I mean, he was a really cool character with Monk and all those guys, and the Man of Bronze. Yeah, he was, and like the paperback books, I got those, and I got because the stories without the pictures were really. I love to read. I got all kinds of books, and same with the Frazetta covers for the Doc Savage, Conan, and all those books. I just loved those stories. So finding the comics that matched up, it was always see you, Doug.
Have a good night, Doug.
So I enjoyed buying them, and I kept my eye open for them. And so there was this comic book shop that was called the Silver Snail, and there were three of them. There was one in Ottawa, one in Hamilton, and one in Toronto. And the one in Hamilton was the closest to where I lived. And if I could get someone to take me there, or I could drive there when I got older, when I became an independent teenager at 16 and had my own wheels, you could go to that place, and it was this phenomenon. It was this phenomenon. It was like comics, and they had multiple copies of. It wasn't a spinner rack that just only had two. That they were. It was amazing, and you could find books that you never could find anywhere else.
Now, I always tell people I didn't start collecting until, heck, I was almost 30 years old, and everyone's heard the story about the subscription my mother got me when I was like 7 or 8 years old. But the local grocery store right down the road from my house, the impulse aisle, right before the cashier, they always had comic books up on there. And every now and then I would con my mother or my grandmother or somebody into picking one of those up for me. And then my oldest cousin, or not oldest, but older cousin, she just lived like a house or two down from me. And she would read these to me whenever I was like really young.
Yep.
But, whatever happened to those books, I don't know. Like they probably just got thrown away.
Well, and there's books that I don't have anymore because I can remember one time one of our really good friends, their son, who was the same age as me, got really, really sick, and my mom put together a care package for him because he couldn't leave the house. And I was okay with that because it was the reason why she did it. So a bunch of my books disappeared, which was for a very good reason. And, you don't go back and get them. And anyway, so I would buy books I was able to buy some books that obviously came out long before I was on the planet. And the last book I'm going to show you from, eBay wasn't a thing back then.
I'm sorry, I was laughing there. That's actually a good comment, Pretty Fly.
So just so you get, and Joe will understand this. You see, there wasn't these things called computers and the internet back there, and yet the Silver Snail is a legend in Toronto now. Sadly, there's only one Silver Snail left, and it's in Toronto, and it's moved 3 times. It's back on Queen Street. It used to be like 2 stories when it first started on Queen Street. It's now really small. It's been sold a couple times. But anyway, so this last book that I'm going to show you from my youth, your
Joe Pesci impersonation.
Yeah, is this one.
Oh, that's a big one.
So what's really cool is just see that.
Is that a date stamp?
That's Stan Lee's signature.
Oh, hold on. Let's make you big. Maybe I'll make you big.
Maybe.
There you go.
So you can see he signed it
right.
I see it. Yeah, right on the rock, which is perfect. So anyways, this book I've had for a long, long time. And in 2010, Stan Lee came to Toronto. So my sons and I to Fan Expo in Toronto. So my sons and I always go again. And I stood in front of him and told him how long I had this book, and he signed it for me.
Oh, wow.
And that's one of those comic book collecting cool things. Like, I know that CGC they would not grade it properly, so I never will have it graded. But
You don't need to.
I don't need to, because I know the story behind it, and I know how many times I cracked this book and read it. And
I'm putting a Jackson thumbs down.
It's just one of those very, very cool books that hangs on the wall. And I look at that once in a while, and I haven't collected comics my whole life because of life, right? So you slow down, step away. But what I've never done is I've never gotten rid of my books. I just haven't added to them because of life. And now then,
I think we've all gone through those stages.
Yeah, and you get better at research, you get better at appreciating the writing, you get better appreciating at the art, you get, you read the histories, you read the biographies of some of these people that put their blood, sweat, and tears and life into these books.
Yeah.
And you really start to appreciate them. That's why I really enjoy the hobby now. More so, I think, than ever before, is because of having a better understanding of the blood, sweat, and tear, and love, and toil, and conflict. And I had the good fortune of talking with Neil Adams more than once. If you want to understand some of the nuances and conflict within the comic book industry, and there's so many great books to read about it. Some of the, I'm a real Matt Baker fan. I would love to find a. Thanks, Steve. It is a good placement.
It is. Yes.
And because Mom didn't ask me to cut it back, because
but she gave them away to the neighbor kid, Joe.
But we lived in a house that was supposed to have 5 kids in it, and I was the only one left, so I had lots of
room.
And we just sold my parents' home when my dad passed away about 7 years ago, the one that I grew up in. So I had lots of room, and I was really spoiled that way. But anyway, when Neil Adams talks to you about the stuff that goes on, I was going to say about Matt Baker. I love his artwork. Like, he did Phantom Lady, the one that was in the big comic books are destroying our youth in the 50s, and
the congressional hearings.
Seduction of the Innocent. Yes. And the fact that he almost had to hide his heritage and his culture so he could be successful in the industry.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff that I find fascinating. So I look for books, even though Matt Baker himself isn't going to benefit from me finding them and displaying them. But if others can hear of his story, and there's a great book whose author is escaping me right now. It's called The Invisible Men, and it's all about these people who, because of their culture and their heritage and they couldn't say who they were to the public, and they produced comics and they drew comics and they worked for big industry, but they couldn't disclose who they were, and they didn't get credit for their work. And that's those kind of things. I love to find those books and hold them up and read them and appreciate them.
And, we're talking about these big names, the Matt Baker, we're talking about Neil Adams, we're talking about Stan Lee. And here's what I love about reading about their stories, okay? They're famous today. They weren't famous back then. They weren't wealthy back then. And I'm not saying they're all wealthy, but I mean, I think there's a little bit more appreciation for the artists, for the writers. They're getting more of a piece of that pie as opposed to timely and national, publications taking all of it.
Yeah.
And whenever you read what, they were going through some tough times, like in their real life, paying their bills, and they're still cranking out these incredible stories, because if they didn't, they might not be eating the next month. So they were motivated to do as well as they did.
Some of those artists were pumping out page after page after page, and covers and stuff, never getting any kind of credit. And some of those older books, I love the painted covers, and I collected those for years.
The
Like
Classics Illustrated has a lot of painted covers.
yeah, and if you got every issue, like every edition,
Well, I don't have every edition.
yeah, if every edition,
multiple printings. But
yeah, there's so many multiple printings. The only one that is only got one printing is it's, oh heavens, it's gone, but it'll come back. There's one of those that's the most expensive Classic Illustrated book, and it only has one printing.
Really?
Yep. And it'll come to me.
Well, hopefully it comes to me, because I'm 99% sure I have every single book in that run.
Is it Great
I don't have the original issue number 1. I have a 1950s reprint, but
I think it's Great Expectations.
You're going to have me looking after this show.
Okay. I'm pretty sure that's it, but I'll confirm that. But you know, for example, Matt Baker did Lorna Doone, the original edition on Classic Illustrated Lorna Doone.
Okay.
And I didn't know that till I was reading his biography. And I went back to my collection and went, well, yeah, because look at her. Like, when you look at the cover and recognize the art. That stuff I think is awesome.
Yeah. And Schomburg, who I love Schomburg, he wasn't well known back then. People didn't know who the artists were. A lot of times they didn't have the writer were, even though they're listed in the credits.
Have you ever heard of a guy by the name of Hal Foster? Foster?
I have not, no.
Okay.
Hal Foster.
Hal Foster is not well known, but if you wanted a horse drawn on the cover of your comic book, that's who you had to do it.
I got to write this down.
Because he did like Prince Valiant, he did Trigger, he did Black Beauty. Like, if he was this guy that could do horses, and he got peanuts for it, but he was, and he got a bit of success doing actual artwork later on, but to do exactly what you talked about, put food on the table, he would do these comic book covers and not sign them because it was not real artwork, which is
it wasn't respected like it is now. Yes.
Yeah, it's not the very fact that most of that artwork got pitched out in the dumpster. Like, if we could find one of those dumpsters intact somewhere in a landfill, we would be really, really, really wealthy.
I was just talking to my father today, and he was born in 53. Whenever he was like 7, 8 years old, he had a newspaper run, he was telling me. Yep. And he goes, with his money, when he went to this one store to get paid because he was making a run for the store, he would use his money and he would just buy the comic books. He goes, oh, I had so many Fantastic Fours and early Spider-Mans. And yeah, he goes, he never threw them away, but he's like, my mother threw them away one day whenever I moved out of the house. And
yep. Yeah. And
my God, it would have been nice. He told me he would buy half a dozen a week of comic books.
Yeah. And that's the story. I guess that's a good thing and a bad thing. It's bad for you as the second generation. It's good for all of us collectors, because if our mothers hadn't have done those things,
yeah, right.
Yeah, we'd all have a Amazing Fantasy 15 because no one would have thrown them away.
See, I wrote that down, Jackson.
Yeah, there we go. You can find them. There's a couple like Sam Savitt, and I was talking with Madam Blaster about it on the Instagram about artists like that, and that's one of the things that's fun about this hobby and this community is you can just throw out topics and shoot the breeze and really go down a new rabbit hole, and you're giving me way too much credit, Joe. I've been reading stuff all day, so I sound smart.
No, I agree with Joe. You are very knowledgeable. You bring so much knowledge, with you, and you're a great guy and a great conversationalist. And I'm not done talking about your origin, but like, we haven't even got into talking about Robert E. Howard, because you're just such a good conversationalist. So thank you, Mark.
Okay, so we should talk about Howard now, because enough about me. Hey,
well, but I have a couple more questions, but let's get into the chat. Wellbore, nice to see you. He's another Canadian.
He is, and he's freezing himself out in Alberta somewhere, probably a lot colder than where I am.
I think Lenny's right. We need to get shovels and go to the landfill.
Yeah, because you know what? If the conditions are right, they're pretty fly. Paper doesn't it can last a long time underground.
Absolutely. So, and it'll be covered in the bag. So we
Yeah.
just got to go to the local Phil that was like around in the early 60s.
Yep.
But who else is here? Steve White is still here. Seth, or I always want to call Seth 111, but it's just 11. um, Pretty Fly is still here. Kenneth Bird, nice to see you, big guy. Steve White.
Yeah.
And then Brian is still in here, and the great Gary, okay? But I agree with Gary. It's great to have people talk about our great hobby because there's a lot of motivations for us to come into this hobby. And it's always refreshing to hear somebody else's point of view.
Well, I'm
Thank
I
you, Tina.
I don't want to say that I'm a true collect. I guess I'm a true collector. Like I swap more than I've ever sold. Like I swap books, but I never did anything about the next big thing. We think we'll get in trouble doing that in the middle of the night with headlamps digging in the landfill.
Nobody will say anything.
No one will say a thing. The people who are in the hobby that are in it because it's a huge investment in speculation, I am absolutely okay with that because it's that aspect of the hobby. And also they find stuff that we then go, I was looking for that and I can buy it now. So if it wasn't for them, like there's books like eBay, the sale of eBay and Shorebox and all those other retailers, it wouldn't exist if it wasn't for that side of the hobby. So I'm glad they're there because it allows me, who isn't into the speculation, the ability to buy a book that I've been looking for.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, like you said, so many different books we find from other people looking. And right now, tonight, you showed some books I didn't even know about. Okay. And the Munsters. Now, I think you showed that on Friday because in my head, when you showed it, I was like, I just saw that book. And I'm like, wait, Mark,
I didn't show that one on Friday. I tried to make it fresh for you. I didn't show you anything I showed the other day. That was other anyway.
Then I saw it somewhere else recently because I'm like, that's a really cool book.
That's one of those. It's interesting because that particular book, the cover doesn't match the story. Yeah, the cover might have been Milt. The cover doesn't match the story, and Gold Key did that a lot.
Yeah.
And they also that's issue 4, but that also shows up in another issue on the cover. I think like they would use the same cover for different books that had nothing to do with the story because Gold Key and they were trying to make money. Oh, there you go.
Joe did make money.
Yeah, and
they were every bit as big as the other publishers.
Oh,
probably
absolutely.
bigger than the others at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, and so like when I was first starting out in my career, when I first got married, and then the boys come along, and I dabbled, and I'd buy some books and stuff, and then once I got kind of settled and really, we've been here now for over 20 years, 24 years roughly.
Okay.
And
you're right on the shores of Lake Superior, right?
No. I'm on the shores of Lake Nipissing. So it's if you go up further, Superior's about 3, 4, 5, 6 hours north of me. And then you head over up to James Bay and then up into Hudson's Bay. Okay. We talked about the other night. So I'm in mid Ontario. Like I can, like, it'll take me about 20 minutes to drive into Quebec, or 3 to 4 hours down to Toronto. Or
okay, so you're on the other side of Ontario than what for some reason I had you on the other side.
Well, I used to live up there. I used to live where the road ended in Ontario. So like you couldn't go any further north by a normal road. So unless it was a winter road or an ice road.
But I lived on the end of the road.
Yeah, we did. We literally lived at the end of the road, and we had a sign just at the north end of town that said no gas or accommodation anywhere past this point.
Oh, geez.
There was nothing. There was isolated flying communities north of us. And
wow.
yeah, this is a huge province. Ontario is big, so
It's gigantic. Steve
yeah.
White and I were talking about it just last week. It is, it's is it the size of France? I mean, it's
Well,
giant.
it's big. And it's gorgeous, and there's a million people on it. But that's I used to smile. There would be people that, yeah. No, I am not up at the Arctic Circle. Steve's down in the center of the world in Toronto, but anyway. But there's people would come in and say, "Well, yeah, I just want to, I'm here for a couple of days. I'm gonna drive up to whatever. They're going to go drive to Kenora because it's on the edge of the province going down Manitoba, and then
Yeah.
spend a day there and then go to Niagara Falls." And it's like, well, okay, that's going to take you 38 hours of steady driving to do that. So there's no concept of the distance and size, and that was part of why sometimes when easy 1 day for Ontario, like, depending if you cut through the states and come below the lakes, it's quicker. You were speeding too, Wellbore. Anyway, that's one of the reasons why I didn't collect for almost a decade, is because where I lived, you couldn't get comics.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of stores up there, okay?
No, and that wasn't, like, everything came in by truck. So what were you paying to get there?
Yeah, and like nobody's taking space on that truck for comic books that are going to sit on a shelf.
So there wasn't comic books, and I never did the subscription thing because, look, I just didn't, because it wasn't a priority for me, sadly, and I missed out on a lot of cool stories, but I'm picking up on them now, and I'm really liking what I'm reading now. I'm doing so much of the independent stuff. Like Boom and Image are I know Image really isn't considered an independent anymore. I know a few. Anyway,
there's a couple.
A couple. The independent, like the smaller companies, the smaller presses are just pumping out stories. Like, I love them. They're unique and new, and I used to be Marvel, and I think maybe I've got 4 titles of Marvel that I read now, and that's it.
The independents, to me, that's where the most enjoyable comics are coming from.
Yep.
That being said, there's still some good books being put out. I mean, I still like the Amazing Spider-Man books. I've actually started reading them again since the new series came out. I've been enjoying it. I don't hate it. I've been hearing good things about Daredevil and stuff, but the independents are what I've been reading mostly.
Yeah. And it's like my oldest son, he's a Daredevil. He loves Daredevil. He likes some of the Superman stuff. And my other son, Connor, he's a big Star Wars fan, and Hellboy and Lobster Johnson and a lot of those Dark Horse titles, and like the Marvel imprints of Star Wars. Yeah, he really likes those titles, and he reads those. So when the three of us, like, we all have the same pull at our LCS. So, we get our pull every week, and, we divvy up the books, and way to go. And it's like, it's so fun to see all this different art, different stories, and different writers, and new collectors. The hobby for me now it is in such a very cool place. I know that there was a lot of publishers in the 50s and pulp magazines, and there were hundreds of them all over the place. And there's been some that came and went, and then we kind of went into the doldrums where we simply had you had Gold Key, you had Dell, you had a Marvel, and you had a DC imprint of some kind.
Yes.
Whatever it was at the time. And that was it, pretty well. I mean, there were some others, but not a lot. And now, look, I don't know how many independents there are. There's hundreds of books.
It's a fascinating time. I mean, you have Soldier Publishing, you have, and I just talked about Second Skin comics.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them out there. And those are, nobody other than, a handful of people know of those. But,
but they're very good handful.
There really are thousands of them out there. Yep.
Yeah, there is. And they're pumping out some amazing stories, and I really like it. Like Was there a Shazam comment there that I missed there, Matt?
Well, there was,
Oh, there we
Dave,
go. See,
Superman is better than everyone. You can't argue with that. Superman's what started it all. But you know what, Dave? Superman came from Doc Savage. So you got to give it up to Doc Savage. Okay.
There you go. See,
In the Pulp Fiction magazines.
The original Man of Bronze was him. But Dave, I don't know if you saw the show on Friday night. I highlighted a Superman book, and I was thinking that you would really like that. That was the only reason I did it, was just so that Dave would, be happy and content, because he's still a little bit sore about the whole Shazam movie thing.
Yeah, it's kind of, is it even in theaters anymore? I don't know.
I don't know. It's really sad.
Yeah, it is, Shaman. And then you had the Whitman variants, which
the Whitman, and you were talking about the grocery store. That was another one of those great places to buy books. You bought the Whitman bags, and you were getting all sorts of cool titles in there.
I'd get those at drugstore.
Yep. Yeah, the grocery store, and the what'd you call it? The incentive aisle.
The impulse buy.
The impulse buy. Yeah, beside the cash register. So the mom would, here, read this and be quiet.
Yes, exactly.
Those were awesome books, and they still are. And I collect a bunch of those. And if I can find them still in the bag, much to the chagrin of some people, depending on if the bag is decorated and it's unique to those comics, I leave them in the bag, because that's part of the hobby's history.
Oh, Dave, we're going to have a show where we talk about what influenced Superman, because and I love Popeye, but I had no clue that Popeye influenced Superman.
I never saw Superman eat spinach, though.
No, he, or look for olive oil. But anyhow, so Mark.
Yes.
We know about Robert E. Howard. Now, Robert E. Howard wrote in the pulp magazines, okay, that talked about Doc Savage, and so many other characters came out of. And I got to be careful, because this darn thing is ceramic, and if I broke it, I think I'd cry.
Oh, but yeah. Don't.
This guy came out of those pulp fiction magazines, but this was actually not one of his original characters.
No.
In fact, how Conan even came to be, he was writing this story about Kal, King of Atlantis.
Yep.
And for some reason, Weird Tales did not want that story. So what Robert E. Howard did was he rewrote it. There you go. Kal and the Barbarians. That's one of the magazines from the 1970s that I love, Marvel magazines.
1975.
Yep. He reworked that story, and he changed the name of the character, and he did change it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Came up with Conan. Conan was a hit. For some reason, that was what people wanted to read. He
was a hit. People ate up his stories and wanted to read them, wanted to see them.
Yes. And so anyhow, whenever he was doing those, he was also writing other stories and other characters. Yep. Some of these characters, and I have them pulled up right here. Okay, you have El Borak, Bran Mock-Morn, Sailor Steve Costigan, Dark Agnes. You have a lot of these characters. Red Sonja, but not the Red Sonja from comic books.
No, actually, the Red Sonja in the comic books is not the way Howard had her at all.
No, Roy Thomas created Red Sonja is what happened.
Yeah, they based, and then they said from the world of Conan, they based her. But I think the only thing they had in common is maybe the name and their hair color.
Yes. Well, he kind of took the character Red Sonja Ragatina and combined her with Belit and Valeria, and just kind of did a mishmash. Honestly, I love Red Sonja.
I do too. From
the comics. Yeah, it's not Robert E. Howard.
Yeah, I've got most, if not all, of her stuff. But again, she's not really from Ron Howard. That's the oops.
Ooh.
There you go.
There you go. Yes.
That's his first appearance. Yep, King Kal. And that was the first guy. And it's interesting, like Conan's bad guys, like Thulsa Doom was King Kal's bad guy. It wasn't Conan's originally, and then they wove him into the movie that they used was Thulsa Doom when it shouldn't have been. It should have been Thoth-Amon, if anything. But like the movies can do that. But there's so many great characters from Robert Howard that some of them have made it to comics. And I was talking to you about a book that I have here somewhere that I can't find. And
I'm sorry. Dave has me cracking up with this. Yes, I don't think Shermie would have been a big seller. But sorry, Mark, go ahead.
You know what, Dave? If Shermie was like a Cimarron and had a big sword and like fought the Frost Giants and stuff, Shermie and the Frost Giants actually has a nice ring to it. So there you go. And look at this guy. He just buys it for the articles. Yeah, you do not.
I froze up again. Darn it.
And this time it's not as flattering.
No, it really wasn't. I'm like, I don't know what I was doing.
There you go.
But this guy for the articles.
So this right here.
Thank you, Gary. Dark Agnes. I have that in the drawers over here.
So I think 5 issues for her. This was her first solo book. Mm-hmm. And the Dark Horse, Robert E. Howard Savage Sword Dark Horse series, and I think it was from the 2010s. There's about 5 or 7 issues of it. That's her first appearance in that series. And her second appearance is in the Serpent Crown, which was not that long ago with Conan. But that Savage Sword from Dark Horse series in 2010, that is an awesome. Oh, yeah. Yep. That Savage Sword series from Dark Horse, they have in it Bran McMorrin and Dark Agnes and Elborak, and they have John Silent in there.
Yes.
And they gave those.
They
are
were
all
written well.
They were well, yeah. Those. It's a good series, well written, great stories, and nobody knows about them really. Like,
Hey, Paul.
When you talk about some of the characters that Howard had, that like this a lot from history, like 16th, 17th century sport, like that's where Black Agnes is from. And that's where the Sailor is from. But you have like Elborak and great,
awesome
great,
to read.
Yeah, but they would be so good comics on their own, but we don't see them.
Yeah, they just haven't, hit it off very well. A lot of people don't know about them, and that's just the truth.
No,
if it wasn't, Gary and I were talking about it. If it wasn't for the, I'm sorry, Mark, but Gary and I were talking about it. If it wasn't for the Frank Frazetta covers on the books in the 50s and the 60s, I don't think anyone would actually know who Conan was today.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, and so I think a lot of these great characters, like if people that like Conan are like, well, what else did this Robert E. Howard write? We've gone back and read a lot of them, but honestly, they're just not as well known.
No, like this one from Dark Horse, this is 1989. It's a 4-parter, and this is one of Howard's characters. And John Bolton did the art on this. And I don't know if you know John Bolton's art. He's he's not quite Frazetta.
Yeah,
but he's pretty interesting
fire cover.
Oh, it's a fire cover. It's a great series, but no one hardly read this. It's because they didn't make the connection, I guess, and it was pretty new for Dark Horse back then.
Yeah, it was. And I'll be honest, I haven't even read it. I do know of that series, but I've just never read it.
It's not a bad read. It's a good story, and it's one of those things. But there is one character of Howard's that I am a big fan of that I'd like to talk about, and that's Solomon Kane. I don't know if
Solomon Kane. Yeah. They did comics for him too.
Oh yeah. So Solomon Kane's his first appearance is in this one.
I did not know that.
Yep. So if you're looking for Solomon Kane's first appearance, it's in Monsters Unleashed.
I gotta write this down.
1973, it's issue number 1 of Monsters Unleashed. Is Solomon Kane's first appearance. And then his Second appearance, if you're looking for it, and I bet you Reggie has this one because it's Dracula Lives. That's Solomon Kane's second appearance.
What issue is that?
That is issue. That's Dracula Lives, October of 1973.
Okay.
Because Solomon Kane is a vampire slayer in the first few times he's in the comic books. So hence why he's in this. And then finally, his very first cover appearance is this one. And that's
is it? I have that book. It's
so you have it, that's his first cover appearance.
Okay.
And Cullen the Barbarians, there's only 3 issues of this magazine, sadly.
Yep.
But yeah, so there he is. That's his first appearance right there on the cover.
Yep.
And Solomon Kane is such a his first sole appearance or first solo book is this one, Marvel Premiere.
The Mark of Cain.
Mark of Cain. So that's issue 33 on the Marvel Premiere books.
Check out Gary bringing out the awesome books.
He's got awesome books.
He really does.
Yeah, Solomon Kane had a bunch of his own books, an own series, and Dark Horse did some, Marvel's done some. They're 4 parts, 6 parts. I watched the movie as well. There is a Solomon Kane movie that was produced in Europe, and it isn't terrible at all. I liked it.
I don't think it had a giant budget, but it was a good story.
It was a good story, and believe it or not, Mezco, I pre-ordered it. I don't know if I'm ever going to see it, but they're doing a Solomon Kane 1/6 figure.
Ooh.
So
there's Mezco statues. Well, you can tell I'm a big fan.
Yeah. So I pre-ordered it, and I pre-ordered it a long time ago, actually before my Death Dealer that's sitting right there.
Yep.
And I got that, and I'm still waiting. I don't know if I'm ever going to see Solomon Kane, but when I saw it, I went, I got to have that. And there's a character that has got I love that whole idea of what he does and stuff. And I just think he's a cool character. And I've got as you could tell, I got every book Solomon Kane's ever been in.
Really?
All of his series, his firsts is, and it's the same. And I have a lot of those. If Robert E. Howard's material is in a comic book, I've tried to find it.
That's a cool way to collect. I call that a completionist. Okay. It doesn't have to be like a big grail or a big, or key or whatever, but just a cool reason to collect. I like that idea. But Seth is from the great state of Texas, and a cool fun fact, Seth, Robert E. Howard, he lived his entire life in the state of Texas. So he's just another great Texan. There's a couple of them out there.
Have you seen this one?
No, I've never seen that one.
So this is a really interesting story, that one of his last stories that he ever wrote.
Published that.
This is Dark Horse published it. So this was in 2008. Or wait a minute. Sorry, 1988 is when they published this. It's a very bizarre story. And then in 2008, Dark Horse came out with a mini-series, I think 4 issues about this story. And they changed it slightly. Robert Howard is the writer of this book. They didn't change it much.
Okay. But they did for the 4.
They did a bit for the series to stretch it out. They didn't for this. And I was tickled when I found this, because it's not a common book. It's not easy to find.
I've never even heard of it.
Well, it's not a title that rolls off the tongue. Pigeons from Hell. Like what?
It just really isn't.
It's not. But again, it's like I look for different authors, and I look for different artists, and like I've got some of my short boxes.
Good news, Joe. Thanks for putting that out there.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know.
It was on Amazon Prime. I saw it back when it came out. I didn't see it at theater, but I saw it. I think I rented it back when we used to rent DVDs. But I haven't seen it since, so I might watch that.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those. It's kind of a cool story, and it's a cool when they did that Hugh Jackman vampire. He was Van Helsing.
Yeah.
If you watch Van Helsing, you got it. They had to have watched that Solomon Kane movie. There's no
I
way they
agree with
couldn't.
you.
It's when I saw Van Helsing, I went, "Well, that's Solomon Kane. That's who
Yes.
it is. That's all. They've just changed his name."
But Joe, thanks for ruining my day. I mean, so excited. I was like, you know what? After the show tonight, I might go downstairs and watch that.
But you know what? If we get like I don't know how many people are watching us. The 6 people who are watching us right now, maybe 6 people searching for it, they'll put it back on.
You never know. The I'd say the 10s and 10s, but the 1s and 1s, and I think we're up to 11 now. So
okay, good. That's awfully decent.
yeah. Hey, this show doesn't get a lot of eyeballs on it, but you know what? The eyeballs that are on it are most amazing people. And I love this show on a Sunday. And I didn't know if I would like doing live because there's a lot of prep. There's a lot of talking for an hour is not easy.
We appreciate it, all the effort, Matt, because it's fun. I like when I can. I like to watch and see because you learn stuff from these shows. I think.
I do. Heck, I learned from you tonight. I'm writing stuff down. Like I'm going to go searching for these books now.
Well, that's, I think that's the fun of this hobby is the hunt. I love that. Yes. Like I love digging through bins. I love going to antique malls. I love going to LCSs. I love going to yard sales. I love doing all that stuff, looking for books and looking for new stories. I do as you know, I do all kinds of research that I can to try to find things like the Pigeon from Hell. Like who knew that existed? And
right.
And trying to find like that Cormac MacArt book. Like he was a minor character he wasn't a main character in a Howard story, and somebody decided to write a comic about him.
Well, the collection you showed today, like you're one of my favorite types of collectors. There's nothing wrong with getting the big books. And I mean that sincerely. There's nothing wrong at all with, wanting to have a Tales of Suspense 39 and hunting it down and trying to find one. Nothing wrong with it at all.
No.
But at the same time, not every book in your collection has to be a giant, super expensive book. No. Some of them could just be cool little, niches. And if you happen to like the TV show Flipper when you were a kid,
did you want me to go get the book?
There's a Flipper comic book out there somewhere.
There is. It's right over there in that bin.
See? That's what I'm talking about. Like you could just have fun with the hobby, and it doesn't have to be something that is, I don't know, a status symbol, if you will.
Well, and you know what? My collection is my collection, and I'm not up or sitting here thinking I can't have these books displayed on the wall because they're hundreds of thousands of dollar books. Like I don't have books like that. Yeah, I have books that either the artist makes me smile, or the show makes me smile. Like, the Get Smart books and the Mission Impossible books and like the where is it? Like these kind of books. Like, oops, sorry.
Yes.
That's in Spanish.
Okay.
So, and then you have King Conan in Spanish. Like this is not an expense like this. I'm not going to go to a trip to Hawaii because of these books.
Yes, you're not missing out on life.
No, and they were next to nothing to buy, but they're cool and they're fun and I just I think that's kind of fun to collect that. It's different. Like Alan was talking about it the other night of collecting different language books and books from different locations and just seeing how some things are spun and some things aren't and what's left in and what's left out. Don't talk about the black hole because I'm still looking for number 4, Steve. That is a grail for me. I've got all the other black holes, but I don't have that one.
Oh, really?
Really? That's black hole number 4 is in a poly bag. That's the only place they sold them. And I've got all the other black holes. I've got black hole a
That
Black
was
Hole
one of my
Lunch Pail.
favorite movies when I was a little kid. Loved
I
that
got
movie.
the Black Hole soundtrack. I have the Black Hole board game. I got the Black Hole Lunch Pail. I got the Black Hole cards. I've got the Black Hole, like these things. Oops.
Oh, the trading cards.
Yeah, like
Nice. I wonder how good that bubble gum would taste.
I'm not gonna try it.
You might chew down once and not get your mouth open ever again. It might turn to cement.
It might, but yeah, number 4, Beyond the Black Hole, was in a poly bag. It's one of those books that
Joe found it.
There you go.
Thanks,
Is that
Joe.
the link on a okay, cool.
Yeah, he has the link right on here.
There you go.
Gonna have to watch that then.
Yeah.
Oh, he doesn't have Black Hole number 4 either.
No, it's not easy to find. There wasn't that many. There's not that many. So, I know that. Gee, thanks, Joe.
Look at that.
That was
looking out for you.
Well, that's awfully nice, and I'll pay for shipping because I know that you have to give a lot to ship to Canada. So,
yes.
It's just one of those books I had a chance at one about 3 weeks ago now. My nephew saw it. He said, "This is in this LCS." It was beat to death. And he told me the price and I said, "Buy it." And by the time we finished that conversation, it sold.
I bet you somebody else who wasn't even looking for it at the store heard the conversation and just snagged it.
Yep. And just snagged it because it was a wall hanger, right? It wasn't that he couldn't put it in his hand and say, "I've got this. Do you want it?" So yeah, it was gone, which yes, Tina will, if Tina can find Chewbacca, Tina can find anything. Yeah. And if you do, Tina, I will look, what kind of bling do you want?
We're going to have to get Tina a lot of bling. She's been doing a lot of AOK. So it's about time we as a community do something for Tina.
I think so too. She's a pretty decent lady, boy.
We're kind of big fans of her around here.
Yeah, and she spoils us badly. So,
so Mark, we're at that point where Joe likes to say he turns to a pumpkin. About that hour mark.
Yeah, we can't. We've bored them enough, no doubt.
Definitely. Well, I don't think people are that bored. People kind of stuck around today, which is awesome. Had some incredible people in the chat. Mark, you either need to move to the U.S. or make Canada a part of the United States.
You know what, Seth? We've had this conversation, man. I am a Canuck, and I can't move there. And we love you like a brother, but we'll stay here.
I love Canada. Like, great people in Canada. And I'm not super far from Canada, so I get up there. I don't know, once every 3-4 years.
You need to come play with me, Wayne, and Steve at Fan Expo in Toronto.
You know what? I think I'm going to make that a thing.
Yeah, you should, because it's a hoot and a half, and it's a lot of fun. So
yeah. So anyhow, Mark, where can people find you on social media?
Well, on Instagram at Mark Andrews 354. If you want to ask me something, and I'll try to give you whatever the response is that makes sense. But I don't do live streams except when fine people like you, Matt, ask me to come on, and I'm honored and humbled when you do. So like you for tonight, Joe on Friday, I just makes me pretty.
This was a fun weekend because, and I've said this 100 times, and I'll say it 100 more times. These live streams are just really fun to do because honestly, we're just hanging out with friends. I get to sit it down, and last week I was talking to Steve White. This week I'm talking to you. Next week I'm talking to Stephanie, Madam Blaster, and it's just we're just talking with good friends, having a great time, talking to the people in the chat. So, I'm a big fan of YouTube and how the comic book community is expanded for a lot of us. Because, Mark, I guarantee you, when you were living on the end of the road, you didn't talk a whole lot of comic books, did you?
Oh no. I was a nerd before it was a cool thing to be. Before the Big Bang made being a comic book nerd a cool thing, I was like a closet nerd like the rest of us.
Yeah,
and only talk to people like you and I talk when you're at the LCS or you're at a show. And then, as soon as it was like you almost
going back to life.
You kind of like this when you snuck out of those places because people looked at you funny. But anyway, I do have to say hi to Dave. Apparently I didn't say hi and now he's upset. So hi, Dave, Action Figure Comedy. I apologize. I don't want to be like that.
Gary has a great idea. He has a show, the 10-1-1, where you get to show 12 books and, they have to mean something to you. And I forget the criteria, what the 10 and the 1 and the 1 is, but I think that would be a great idea, Gary, to have Mark come on to Gary B's channel.
If you think that would be appropriate, I'd love to.
It would be great. So anyhow, guys, I want to thank everybody for watching, and you guys have a great day.
See you, everyone.